Hello and welcome to Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin and this is the show where you can have your property related questions answered by a team of experts. And I'm very pleased to say we have joining us today Ryan Hughes, founder of the Mr. Investa brand, the buy-to-let marketplace. Welcome to you, Ryan.
Thanks, Stephen.
And Bobbie Jethwa, CEO and Director of UK Property Agents. Welcome to you.
Hi, Stephen. Hi.
Good to have you both back again. So we're going to get straight on with the questioning, and Bobbie, you're going first. I'm looking at buying an investment property in northwest London. The property is a retail shop with a 2-bedroom flat above it. I've previously had buy-to-let finance from a specialist lender. However, they've turned my application down as obviously the shop element is not residential, but also they've suggested that they don't like funding flats above shops. Have the panel experienced this problem before, and if so, is there a way around it?
Simple answer is I don't think there is a way around it. It depends on the usage of the retail unit that's downstairs. Lenders don't tend to enjoy lending to people that are just going to buy the flat rather than the freehold. So if they're purchasing the freehold, then yes, there is lending possibility. Otherwise, they can buy cash. That can be a way around it. But as far as products are concerned, they're very limited. Okay. Because
what is the objection from a lender to buying above?
Well, if you have a laundrette or a dry cleaners or a kebab shop, for example, or anything like this underneath the your 2-bedroom flat, then it's going to cause a problem also with insurance. I think that would be quite a heavy burden on getting the flat insured, on the building's insurance, because obviously there's more risk involved.
I suppose so, but on the other hand, you know, the councils, they'll often say, well, it's all right having a flat there, but we want some infrastructure around, we want some services for the people who live in the flats, and almost seems a bit contradictory, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. I mean, if you have like an insurance company or a brokerage or a travel agency or something office based, then obviously the lenders would look at that a bit more kindly. Whether if you have dry cleaners, lenders tend to, and then also it depends on where the entrance of or how you get to the upper part of the property. Do you go through from the front? Is it a rear entry? So it's dependent on when the lenders send their surveyors to see, you know, whether it's viable for them to lend on it.
What do you think, Ryan?
I think for me, we've seen a couple of different cases where you have better success with private banks, someone that comes out and assesses what that commercial unit is, especially where there's takeaways.
Rather than the dreaded desktop valuation.
Yeah, the desktop valuation sometimes can just get very easily dismissed, and you need someone to come and say yes or no, and why it's a yes or a no. We found more success coming from private banks because you do get that assessment, and they will say, yeah, you can see why you're investing there, not just that particular unit. So it adds more value. I think we've seen it from health and safety, especially where takeaways are concerned, but also from bookmakers and betting shops of people's spending habits. Is this person going to come downstairs and spend all the rent on this property, and will they be able to afford? There's a mixture of reasons. Sometimes I think people just don't like to lend on it, but we work with a good number of people that have different products for it. You pay higher because it's more of a niche market, but me personally, I think they're a great investment for a mixed use.
Well, I think you're right, Ryan, because I mean, if you know, we're always looking at buy-to-let and we're saying, well, what's the future? You know, there's people coming out of it at the moment because of legislation and things like that. But this is a good mix. It's a good balance, isn't it? You split your risk. You know, you've got two sources of income from sort of different backgrounds, and
generally on longer leases as well. So a lot of the commercial units, they won't just do your 6 or 12 month AST because they have to refurbish the shop or change it into what they want.
Yeah.
So you'll tend to find even the occupier will be saying we want it for a minimum of 2 or even 5 years. We know some of the bookmakers take 20-year leases on them.
Right. Okay. Well, there we are. A bit of a mixed bag then, the answer to that one, isn't it? I don't think there's a yes or no to it. But as I say, I would have just encouraged somebody to have a sort of mixed-use portfolio. I think it just gives them safety.
I think from the finance aspects of the question, it's where they're looking for that finance, especially if they've had it and they won't renew it, what's changed. And a lot of people's appetite has changed just from lending altogether. So that's more of a divert question of we don't want to lend on it anymore.
But you know something, on Property Question Time, we were saying this all the time. You build your team of professionals, and again, your finance broker is a key member of that team, isn't he?
One of the most important, especially where finance is required.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Ryan, your question. Rental rates are rising nationwide, which should be good news for buy-to-let investors. However, funding costs driven by rising interest rates are actually squeezing the investors' margins, so much so that some of them are withdrawing from the market, causing a stock shortage. This is just seeing rents rising even faster. What do the panel think of the prospects for this sector over the next couple of years? Crystal ball time.
Yeah, very, very, very much. But I think it's quite transparent if we watch, especially from a finance point of view, then rates are now gradually coming down again. I think the margins will come back into it. We've just seen a big spike and everyone's gone, oh, that might not be viable anymore. But actually, as we're seeing, using examples, 6% a couple of weeks ago, I spoke to the mortgage lender yesterday and it's now below 5%. It's coming back down. So then people that are making very quick, harsh decisions are opening for the people that don't require finance or don't require as much finance. So it's how much that person is leveraged, I suppose. The rents are keep increasing. So in my opinion, if that finance comes back down where people have finance on a property, margins are going to go increase.
I mean, I did see somebody on the television the other day sort of say, just be careful. I don't know why people are assuming that rates will naturally just go back to where they were. They probably won't. I
don't think they will go back to where they were, but they're not, they've spiked and then they'll level off. I still believe there'll be 3.5%, 4% deals to be had there, just from the way it's naturally coming. And just there's got to be an affordable amount to make it work. The lenders need to make it work because otherwise the lenders may as well just shut up shop.
Do you think the rents will come down pro rata?
No. That's why you need to buy.
I don't know why I thought you might say that, Ryan. What do you think, Bobbie?
Yeah, I sort of agree with Ryan there. I can't see, Bank of England will probably keep their base rate as what it is now. I can't see it going any lower anytime soon. So, products wise, you're looking at 6%, we will find out a lot more going forward in the new year where things will be. But personally, I think, they could go to 4.5%, 5%. However, I with the inflation the way it is and the way the markets are at the moment, I can't see that happening anytime.
See, I think that's the other thing. I think if you're thinking there's going to be a rapid decrease in inflation, I think you're dreaming on that one as well. Because, it's like you talk to people who are in the sort of transport business, and container rates from the Far East or Middle East are hugely inflated at the moment. And because that's driven by fuel costs and energy costs and getting those crates moved, it's not going to happen in 5 minutes, is it, any reduction?
I think it's people just adjusting to it. Everyone's now pushing for a wage increase. They will get them, but they're not going to get to match inflation. So it may take 2 or 3 years for them to have 1 or 2 salary increases, and everything will find its level again like it has done in the past, but it will be higher than when it set off.
Yeah. And what about the sort of overall rental market, Ryan? Do you think it is going to suffer in the next couple of years? Are people going to price themselves out of the market with their properties?
I think they're led by the local market in that area, depending on what they've purchased in their portfolio. But we've just seen a huge demand, and even for the rental rates to be at an all-time high of what I believe they are now, that's because of how many people are going per property. There's been no drop. Every property that you list for rent, there's 15, 20 people knocking at the door. Even if it calms down, 5, 10 people knocking at the door. So it may calm down slightly. But now that, you know, they're scrapping the 300,000 homes, you know, there's still not enough homes being built.
But Ryan, you say tenants are knocking at the door at the rate of sort of 15 to 1, if you like.
Yeah.
Are the investors knocking at your door saying we want to buy because there is this demand?
Yeah, that's one of the main reasons. Potentially not. We've seen a huge change, as we always do in these uncertain times, from the people that require finance, and the cash comes back out, and we get the cash investors coming in. You know, we've had one of our best months yet due to the current climate of stocks increase because someone's overfinanced and they're not going to be able to afford the renewal, or the renewal's going to be putting them in a negative compared to the rent, whereas the people that don't require finance, they're getting the full effect of the rental increase. So it's win-win really. The stock's coming in thick and fast and the sales are matching, but it's different clientele. One's selling because of finance, one's purchasing because they don't require finance, and the deals are there to be had.
Okay, well, on that super optimistic note, that's all we've got time for in this half of the show. So we're going to go to our break now, and after the break, we'll be joining Bobbie and Ryan again for the answers to more of your questions. Hello, and welcome back to part 2 of Property Question Time, joined by Bobbie Jethwa and Ryan Hughes. And Bobbie, your second question. With the government talking about introducing no-fault eviction rules, I have taken out a rental guarantee insurance. Will this automatically carry on if my tenant goes past the lease end date under the new rules?
Depending on the policy. But yeah, rent guarantee insurance generally would mean, like, if it would be similar to like a car insurance. So if you have a set date and the date is the end, so if the tenancy is finished, then the insurance company has no longer a responsibility to pay you.
Let me just try and expand the question a little bit. I mean, we work a little bit blind because you just get the question and perhaps not all the detail. But so I think what the inference is here is that he takes out a rental guarantee for the 12-month tenancy that he's got. Now, with a no-fault eviction, my understanding is that the tenant, unless there is some reason that the landlord needs for his own use or something, they've got the right actually to stay in there and carry on paying the rent. Now, although that keeps them in the property, therefore the term no-fault eviction is out of the window, is it a breach of the lease? Are they there sort of under sufferance, if you know what I mean? So therefore, would the insurance company say, well, you know, we only guaranteed this for 12 months, or we only...
Well, it's a periodic tenancy. So most tenancies...
it turns into a periodic.
Yeah, periodic, exactly. It turns into one. So therefore, the tenant can stay as long as they have an agreement with the landlord that they're happy to keep them at that property. However, with the insurance company, it's a different ballgame, because the insurance company would then need to re-vet the tenant.
I think that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So because that tenant's circumstances may have changed after 12 months. So therefore, they would have to resubmit the referencing, the checks, everything else, their credit reference and such, to please the rent guarantee insurance company that the tenant is okay for another 12 months for them to guarantee.
So it's not a given then, is it?
It's not a given, no.
And I mean, this business of turning into a periodic tenancy, I mean, that's always been, you know, the worry for a landlord, hasn't it, in the past? So are we putting that worry aside now and assuming that that's what will happen?
There's constantly changes, and some of these rules that come in, they work for one way and don't for the other, depending on the situation of if you've got a good tenant or you've got a bad tenant. If that tenant's in rent arrears, it's a completely different story.
But even then, Ryan, I mean, you will know it's your specialism, but I've seen it in the courts. If you want to take somebody to court for non-payment of rent and repossession of the property, I mean, first of all, you've got to be, I think, 3 months in arrears before a court will look at
minimum.
it. That's number one. If you can get a court hearing in 3 months these days, well, good luck with that one. Yeah. You know, I mean, you're probably looking at 12 months realistically at the moment, unless you can find a particular court that's got a low list.
And then
a
you
fast
then
track.
sorry, Stephen, but then you've got the judges nowadays. I mean, they're, because of COVID and everything, there's a massive delay in hearing the cases.
Yeah.
Just getting the case
Yeah.
into the courts is hard enough as it is. So
Yeah.
I mean, it will take.
So I mean, the system is
longer.
almost creating periodic tenancies, isn't it?
I think that's why it's really important, whoever is entering your property, you vet them, or the person that is vetting them is at the top, because there's a lot of people that are getting the let only fee, putting whoever in, or getting that management fee, and they're not really bothered. There's some people that will be in rent arrears and they'll still charge you the lettings fee because it's not their fault that they've not paid the rent. I'm a big advocate of rent guarantees if you can make the price stack up depending on what it's at, and especially with people that have finance on the property or a leasehold apartment where there's service charges involved to take care of any of them void periods.
Well, it's quite interesting. We did a programme on accountancy the other day, and one of the issues that came up was the fact that if you don't get your rent, if you go into arrears with your tenant, or your tenant goes into arrears with you, I should say, really, do revenue accept that? Just accept your word as proof that you're not getting the rent, therefore there's some relief against your taxation on that rent. And the fact of the matter is they don't.
No.
They don't.
They would look at your bank statements and you could...
Not
your
good enough.
accountant-
The advice we ended up with was that they would probably want to see the result of court action
Right.
before they would actually sanction a rebate or whatever, depending on, of course, whether you're a limited company or a private individual and how your taxation works. But it's not an easy subject, is it?
No.
Just because you're not getting your rent doesn't mean you're not going to pay tax on it, unfortunately.
It's exactly the same as the lettings fee.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that the tenant's not paying the rent. They're still the ones that are giving the sections or trying to help you get the tenant out. So they're still providing their service. It's just in a different way. Instead of inspecting, they're trying to evict.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's hope things change for the better. Although I'm not very hopeful with the government sort of. I mean, I just don't know whether the government have the access to the specialist people that can really help with effective legislation.
I think it's just meddling in something that they don't need to meddle in.
Yeah. And when we've got housing ministers with an average sort of tenure of about 10 or 11 months, you're not going to make much progress, are you?
I think some are just done for votes, and there's not a strategic plan of how this is going to affect. Bear in mind the property market keeps the UK economy propped up 90% of the time.
Yeah. I mean, just going back to our conversation about interest rates earlier, it's very easy, isn't it, just to have in your mind that interest rates is just about mortgages. It's not. It's about industry, it's about all sorts of things, So I'm afraid we do get a bit self-centered about it, don't we? But anyway, there we are. Okay, Ryan, I wish to geographically diversify my buy-to-let portfolio. A number of agents have suggested I follow the path of HS2 and invest in those target cities. Do the panel think this is good advice, or is the over budget and controversial view of this project, you can tell what he thinks about HS2 just too speculative to rely on when investing my hard-earned cash?
I personally would just steer away from it. I think we've spoke about it in previous shows, and everyone has a different opinion on it. If it gets done, I'll be amazed. It's just, especially with what's going on with the chopping and changing, it's a too big a project now, but it's too big a fee for someone to close down, because it's who's gonna cut the rope and go, that's a loss. For me, especially, we operate nationwide. We're able to focus on the areas, and one of my big focuses or my recommendations would always be looking at the universities, and the universities have always worked very well because they have a very high population of not only students but residential that push onto the residential markets. So therefore the surrounding houses off campus tend to be some of your higher performing rents. So I would focus on universities that are close to city centres. Public transport. Public transport's always been the big, I know we're saying HS2, but current public transport.
HS2 is not public transport, is it? It's not.
No, but I mean in terms of transport, sorry. In terms of transport, it's the transport links to me are vital, but ones that are operating, not what's to come. some people can beat the curve, but it's long enough that there's ways to invest down it. But personally, I'd be focusing on the universities and the big corporate companies. One thing that we tried to do is give our clients the heads up of what everyone thinks. It's great being near a headquarters of a big company, but it probably houses 100 people, 150 people. We've seen some of the biggest retailers in Manchester, but they've got 100 people in the city centre. But there's 2,000 people in Sheffield that they've just employed, and they've created a big warehouse, and it's job creation has always been the key backbone of where we advise people to invest. That job creation puts on the pressure for the current housing market, and then people, when they come, the rents are increasing. So you've not only got work for the job creation, you've also got that capital appreciation.
Yeah, and you've got the wealth to pay for whatever you're providing to the market.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, Bobbie, we've had this in London, haven't we? People chasing Crossrail across the city and suddenly thinking that, you know, Ealing Broadway is going to be the centre of the universe, you know. I mean, it just don't work. It just don't work,
does not work. And Ryan's completely right with what he says. The formula is to stick with the well-known universities and bigger corporate companies and go from there. HS2, it's a pipe dream. We have no idea when it's ever going to come to fruition.
I mean, the budget's gone from 25 billion to 125.
It's not getting built.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, we just don't know.
We've had this conversation before. It's not getting built.
It's not getting built.
Right,
I mean,
much as
it's up in the air. Yeah, it's one of those. Who knows? Who knows when it's going to happen?
No one wants to be the person that cuts the cord and goes, that's a loss.
Yeah.
Because it's just passed on to the next person to the next person.
Do you know what? I reckon they'd get a knighthood if they did.
Please stop spending the money.
Yeah. I mean, HS2, the cost of HS2 would actually fund the NHS in total, wouldn't it, for a year?
Yeah.
In total.
We wouldn't have the strikes that we got today. So.
Oh well. Well, look, there we are. That's all we got time for today. So a great big thank you to Ryan Hughes and Bobbie Jethwa. Great answers to your questions. I'm Stephen Galpin. I look forward to seeing you next time on Property Question Time.